YouTube, what is up? James, MTG Biggie here, and if you checked out my last video on the channel, it was sort of a general updates video, new stuff going on in Magic, what I'm doing, and sort of a catching up, updating the channel and stuff like that. And I think I'm going to do these videos periodically, and I came up with a name for them after I made the last one, and that is Missed Triggers. So the last video from 4 days ago, if you'd like to check it out, I'll link it down below at the end of the video. I went through some stuff, new deck I was playing in Modern, the GP updates, the new promos, Vintage, some stuff like that, just current happenings and stuff going on in Magic. And today, I wanted to talk about a few different things. I recently played a PPTQ. We'll start here. On Sunday, I took the day off work and I went to play a standard PPTQ here in Tampa, Florida. And I haven't played standard for a long time. So I decided to borrow a deck from my buddy Dave, who had two options for me. I could either play Temur Energy or play Sultai Energy. And because I like the cards better, because they're more leaning toward my play style and my preference, I felt like I would try out the Sultai Energy deck. I really like the Scarab God. I really like Walking Ballista and Winding Constrictor. I feel like those cards in a vacuum are more conducive with what I would like to do. So I took Sultai Energy and I went 1, 2, and 1 technically, but actually 1, 2, and 1 and 3. Sorry, and I'll explain that in a moment. So going through my rounds, and what I realized over the course of this tournament is what I was doing with Sultai Energy, it's just far less powerful than Temur. The Sultai deck's not great. Not in the current meta. If Temur Energy wasn't a deck, and they couldn't make way more energy and utilize their energy better, more effectively than you could, maybe Sultai's a good deck, but I just don't think that there's much to it. It felt really underpowered the whole time. Round 1, I played against a very new player who didn't quite fully grasp what was going on, so he was playing some pretty bad cards in his deck. It was like a 4-color, just stuff I have deck, and I was surprised that he was actually like investing the time and the $25 in playing a PPTQ. So I won fairly easily, and this isn't speaking ill of my opponent. He just wasn't that familiar with the game to be playing it in the situation he was playing in. So that was my first victory. So it felt good from the start, but I knew like to temper my expectations, because I'm always happy to win, but like you gotta sort of like consider where your win is coming from. Not to say that my opponent is a lesser player, he's just a newer player and didn't quite know what he was doing with the cards he was playing. Round 2, I played against Temur Energy, and I got crushed. I got crushed so badly that it felt everything I was doing was not a step behind, but 3 steps behind everything that my opponent was doing. And my opponent, very good player, very good Temur player, and I sat down across from him. He broke out a carved wooden energy reserve token card. Like it was like a good 1/8 of an inch thick wood with like a burned carving of the energy logo and like gears, and it was really nice. And that's one of those things, like kind of like in Modern when you sit across from somebody and they break out their Merfolk deck and they have all Japanese foil signed cards throughout their whole deck. It sort of gives them that like, okay, this dude knows Merfolk. This dude's going to be a very good player with this deck. I get it. Like they're going to gain some advantage points just for knowing their deck very, very well. That's how I felt with the guy with the custom wooden token for his energy dice or whatever. Needless to say, like I said, he proceeded to crush me. It felt like everything I was doing was really underpowered, and everything he was doing was way better than what I had going on my side of the table. At one point, I casted a hostage taker. I stole his Lifecrafter's bestiary, which I intended on casting the next turn. But he then stole my my hostage taker with a vizier of many faces, which is insanely good against what I was doing. And it's not like I can remove it because you just eternalize it or whatever and do it again. So he stole my hostage taker. And then the next turn he casted my hostage taker, and then he stole, I believe, a winding constrictor with it, and just proceeded to make infinite energy and have all the fun and all the resources while I'm sitting here staring at really underpowered walking ballistas. Walking ballista, unless this token deck comes up to be huge, it's a sideboard card at best, and the Sultai deck is playing 4 of them in the main deck. And it, on paper, is a great card, but Teamer just, you can't kill anything in that deck. It's really hard to kill a Long Tusk Cub or a Bristling Hydra. It's really hard to kill most of that deck, except for maybe Rogue Refiners. I think I took down a Rogue Refiner or 2 over the course of the tournament. So, that being said, my opponent beat me pretty badly, and then I moved on to the next round, where I was paired against a friend who was playing Grixis Control, and again, I felt like shamelessly outclassed by my opponent. It just, the things I was doing was just getting trumped by everything he was doing. He had all the removal for everything I did, and even in Game 2, when I felt ahead because I had resolved a Scarab God with some stuff to reanimate, he resolved his own Scarab God, and so we were at this weird Scarab God standstill, and then he resolved 2 Torrential Gear Hulks and just crushed me. Like, we ran out of stuff in the graveyard to reanimate, and then I just had to chump block a couple Gear Hulks over and over again until he eventually just won the game. Until I could no longer do anything. I was out of resources, and I scooped. That's how this whole tournament felt. Round 4, I played against Teamer, and this round was interesting, and the most interesting match that I had, because my opponent in Game 1 kind of beat me, did the Teamer thing, and just was out ahead. And then Game 2, we played, and I finally pull ahead in a game, and I resolve a Winding Constrictor, and a Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and some other stuff, and then ended up resolving a Scarab God, and started reanimating stuff. But my opponent was in the game the whole time and kept with it, and ended up eventually with a board state where he had 3 Bristling Hydras, a Long Tusk Cub, a Rogue Refiner, and a Servant of the Conduit, and a ton of energy. And I had a Scarab God, a 4/4 reanimated Glint Sleeve Siphoner, a regular Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and then like a Winding Constrictor and a Rogue Refiner, and 8 mana where I could reanimate a couple things, or I could cast the spells in my hand. So he decided to Alpha Strike me down from like 16 life. He attacked with everything. I made sure the 3 Hydras and the Cub were all blocked because he had a ton of energy, and if I don't block any of them, I die. And then I let through, it was actually 2 Refiners and a Servant at that point. And then he was at 9. He put me down to like 6, or if I was at 16, like 8 or whatever. I untap. I draw my card. I assess my hand, which is like a Voracious Content and a Long Tusk Cub. And then I look in the graveyard, and there's a couple things to reanimate. There's a Rogue Refiner, and I think another Cub. So, assessing my hand, I reanimate a Rogue Refiner to draw a card, see if I can get any more information. I think it was a land, no help there. And then, since my opponent was tapped out, I was trying to think of what he could possibly have. So if I just attack him and try to kill him, if he has a removal spell, I'm dead. Luckily, he was down to 1 card in hand, so I attack him for 9 and kill him in 1 shot. Unfortunately, it took a lot of time tanking, and then a little bit more time sideboarding and shuffling up that I wanted to really spend. And game 3, I pulled ahead pretty quickly and made a couple trades and got ahead on resources and whittled down my opponent's board to nothing, where I had a Rogue Refiner and a Cub in play. And was the point where I was at 20, he was at 17, and we went to time and went into turns. And on turn 5, which my opponent had, he realized like he can't win, and I'm ahead on the board. And because of that, we were going to take a draw. At 1 and 2, taking a draw, no good for anybody. It doesn't help anybody's record. It doesn't help anybody's chances of placing. And at like X and 2, you're probably already dead. But X 2 and 1, you're absolutely not making anything. It's just as bad as being X and 3. So I talked to my opponent. I'm like, clearly I'm ahead here. I'm probably going to win this game if it goes, full time and we have the whole time to play it out. He's like, yeah, probably. I was like, whatever. And I was like, hey, man, look, having drawn either of our records is no good for either of us. Are you planning on playing the whole thing and sticking it out? And he's like, yeah, I think so. I'm going to stay and play the whole thing. I was like, you know what? You go ahead and take the win, and I'll concede to you and write down the win in your column and play it out, and good luck to you. He was like, dude, thank you. That's so cool, whatever. And it felt good. Like, I was ready to go home at that point. I had already felt like I'm just going to dredge through a bunch of teamer decks after this, and it just felt bad. Like, it felt not like a tournament I wanted to continue playing in, because I felt really helplessly behind everything that was going on, and I felt like continuing to play wasn't going to be good for anybody. So, I scooped up my stuff, I took off, I went home, got home that night, went to see a movie, had a good time with some friends and my girlfriend. It was a good time. That's where I think Standard is. I think Teamer's just the best deck. If you're not playing Teamer, unless you spent a lot of time with another deck and really know it well, you're probably messing up. Teamer's probably the safe choice. Which leads me to the Pro Tour coming up. I feel like it's going to be a lot of Teamer decks, so I'm not that excited. That's all I got to say about that. We'll see. I'll check it out for sure and see how it goes. Aside from that, we have a couple new promos coming up and preview cards for Rivals of Ixalan, one of which I am super excited for, and that is Silvergill Adept. I'll get this out of the way now. Those who play Modern Merfolk like myself know that Silvergill Adept is an incredible card in that deck, probably one of the best. 2 mana, 2/1 that you draw a card with very little drawback at the cost of revealing a Merfolk. Extremely powerful. And I think if we get one more Lord or one more powerful Merfolk, either a 2 or a 3 drop, Merfolk may be a thing in Standard. I hope it is. I really look forward to it being a good playable deck at least. If at the point that Rivals of Ixalan comes out, it's good enough to beat Teamer, or to beat whatever's happening at that point, I don't know. But I think it's a step in the right direction. It's a good reprint. The new artwork looks great. There's a full art promo with different artwork that looks really good. And I'm very excited for it. And then there is Galta Primal Hunger, which is a ridiculous 12 mana, 12/12 Elder Dinosaur Legend, which is kind of a sweet creature type that costs X less, where X is the total power of creatures you control. It has trample. Just a big, dumb, dirtly dinosaur, which is cool. Probably going to be like top end in your dinosaur decks, if there are dinosaur decks, and Teamer doesn't just continue rolling the format. But that's pretty much it, guys. Just wanted to go over the updates. The channel's doing well. We're at 261 subscribers, so thank you guys very much. All of you I look forward to hearing from and seeing what's going on the next time I make another Missed Triggers video. So thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys again very, very soon.